session beginning at 3:30 to discuss ongoing litigation. And we'll allude to that somewhat later on in the agenda. Let's go to the, John, what's your schedule? You got it?
I'm fine.
Are you okay? Okay, let's just go to number 1 on the council agenda then. Discussion and consideration of the County Council of Wasatch County, Utah, acting as the governing board of the Wasatch County Fire Protection Special Service District, Wasatch County, Utah District, regarding findings relating to the protest of Wasatch County Fire Assessment Area. This will be in resolution number 12-15, and also matters that relate to this. We've been, like I said, we've been in discussion with our attorneys and counsel on this. Going to come to some conclusions here in regular session. Steve, I'm going to ask you to kind of brief us on what we talked about in executive session.
Sure, I'll just set the stage. We engaged the firm of Lewis, Young, Roberts, and Birmingham to tally the protest that we received in relation to the fire district assessment we passed in the Jordanelle. And we've had some ongoing discussions with them about some of the protests that were collected, and they are coming back today. I'll spend some time over to them to tell us what the results of some of their findings are as it relates to some of those protests. So,
Kelly, yeah. Kelly, just so everyone knows, and so Rick gets it for the record, just state your name.
Okay. Kelly Post, I'm with Lewis and Roberts in Birmingham. Like you mentioned, we've been engaged to look at the tally. Before you is a summary of our results in the report and what you'll see. As you remember, we did give a tally on December 5th, 2012. Since then, it has gone to litigation, and the judge requested that we put in protests that had been received late. So anything that was postmarked on or before November 8th, 2012, I did add back into the tally. There was one protest that was postmarked on the 9th. It still has not been included because it was after that deadline. We also, at that time, if you remember, reserved the right to be able to go back and investigate further protests because there was evidence of fraud. I think at the time we had 7 protests which were confirmed fraudulent, and we had an idea that there were probably additional protests that were fraudulent. To that end, the county has asked us to send out letters. We sent out letters on 4 different occasions to property owners asking them to verify that they did personally submit the protest to Wasatch County, and also that the signature on the form was them. And then we gave a space for additional comments from the property owners to tell us if there were other circumstances or other information we should know about relating to the protests that were received and on that in the county. On that first page, you can see there's a summary. There were initially 238 parcels which were contacted. They received a first letter. If we hadn't heard back from them, we sent out a second letter. We did choose 15 parcels to do a certified letter to make sure that the property owners were actually getting the information. And then we've also sent out a 4th letter to those properties who had received certified, really asking, please let us know the information about this so that we can continue so we can get an idea of what the tally really ought to be. And then we also sent out a first letter to 64 parcels which hadn't been previously contacted. That was at the end of January. Some of the results is in total we contacted 302 property owners. That is only 10% of the total parcels within the assessment area, because we tried to just focus for time and cost reasons, focus on those that would most likely be fraudulent to get information back from them. That's not to say that we believe that there isn't fraud in any of the other ones that we haven't contacted. We were just trying to be as cost effective as possible. From that, we've understood that at least 67 parcels have fraudulent protests submitted on their behalf. Only 58 have actually been excluded from the count because there were some that had both a fraudulent and a legitimate protest, and we wanted to make sure if there's a legitimate protest, the property was counted as protesting. Some of the property owners indicated that they had sent in a protest in their notes, but the one that we were having them verify was not from them. In that case, we went back to the records, we looked through everything that was actually submitted. If we could find a legitimate protest for them, we made sure to count it. If we couldn't, we don't have any record of an actual protest, so we can't continue to count the property. And those have been included in the fetch form. Also, in the tally, I've marked those that indicated they were a proxy protest. Somewhere in their comments, they indicated it and said, no, it's not really from them, but they authorized somebody else to send it in, or it was a proxy protest. And there were 12 of those that were indicated in that way. At the bottom of the second page, there is information. When we sent out the notice to the property owners and posted it in the newspaper, it did indicate, and this was the property notice that all property owners would have received. Protests need to be filed in writing by the owner of the property, which is within the proposed assessment area, and then delivered in person or via mail service, not by proxy to the county auditor or clerk of Wasatch County. And so it was pretty clear that the county did not intend to count those. So I've listed those separately, and in the tally you can look if you want to include or exclude those 12 who have indicated that they are proxy ballots. As before, we've also counted parcels where the address was listed somewhat incorrectly. We did our best. Those are still included in this tally. Both signed and unsigned protests are included. Letters of wishing to withdraw protests, which were received after the deadline, were not included. Many of the Stitching Mayflower properties, which is about 4% of this protest count, are still included because the withdrawal would have been after the deadline. And we want to make sure to keep within the deadline and what was allowed. On the back page, it shows the tally of the protests. So there's both the 10 and consent protests. When we remove those that were withdrawn after that, or withdrawn before the deadline, and then remove the protests which are fraudulent in nature, then the total count, including the late protests that the judge asked us to put back in, is 49.87%. If the county board chooses, you may also exclude the proxy protests. That's about 0.25%, which would take the count down to 49.62%. The county can also choose to exclude the properties from the 9 certified letters where there was no response given. We have a written record that they did receive. They signed for the letters, so they did receive them, and they've chosen not to respond. The idea behind that is if they wanted their protests to be counted, they would have let us know if this is a legitimate protest. We want to make sure that it is counted in good faith, but they have chosen not to respond to our letters. That would make the protest count 48.77%. Additionally, there are a group of 81 parcels which have received 3 letters and still have chosen not to respond. They would be very similar. They've received notice, we've inquired and wanted to say, we want to make sure we count your protest, let us know that it's valid, and they still have not done so. As a total, there are 983 parcels on record, including the one late protest, which is still excluded from the count, that are desiring to protest. That's only 34% of the total property owners in this area. So I think, and that is one method that could have been used in an assessment area. So you can see that by all of these methods, there is less than 50% that are protesting this assessment area. And in that case, the district would be allowed to use the words.
Okay, before we go forward, is there any questions from the board on the process? This isn't a public hearing, but we would entertain comments on the process as Kelly has explained. Yes.
I'm Mike Kozakowski. Most of you probably know me by now. I have 2 questions. One is, and my wife, who's an attorney, looked at the questionnaire that was sent out. I'm sorry, I'm not getting the attention of the person. Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. And my wife looked at it. She's an attorney. We also referred it to other attorneys. First of all, no questionnaire was ever sent to me. Somebody forged my signature. I send things in, but nobody ever contacted me other than, I guess, Ernie directly, Chief Giles. But what legal obligation do you have, not having subpoena power, to tell people that if they don't respond, their vote doesn't count?
Yes, Randy.
I could.
Yes,
I
please.
respond. Randy Larson, with Ballard Squatter, counsel to the Governing Board of Finance. I think, Mr. Chair, you might want to clarify your request for comments. Because we are in litigation, I would recommend that we not have our questions related to the litigation.
Well, I withdraw my question and just make a statement that it is a statement of mine that there was no subpoena power. I had people calling me and saying, should I respond to this? And I told them, you must respond truthfully. Okay? Now, whether they responded or not, and I certainly gave them no direction, how can, I asked the counsel, how could that be held against them? The second point I want to raise, and no one would listen to my points because it was such minutia, is that the point, you have 49.87%. The tally that was given to me, that's the 37 pages, 36 pages, and it had all the dollar value, you know, the assessed value of the properties, and it had, you know, what their vote would be given, you know, the percentage or the tax. And I actually ran those numbers. I ran about 4 pages of that out of the 36 numbers, and the mill tax was precisely what, 0.0055, whatever it was, whatever value. This is not a test, so you know I don't ask you to have it correctly, but I ran that. That value changed at the same significant figure as the difference between this and 50%. But no one would listen to me. Okay? That means you go back to that. Have you rerun your data program, adding up all the votes and the dollar amount that works to, and how does that compare to the $1.2 billion? You're within the same significant error as what you've recorded here from your own tally. You know, and I gave examples. It was like, and I don't know whose computer, it was like the old Microsoft chip that was wrong at the 4th decimal point. You know, you know, and I use that as an example. We're going to land up, you know, with the litigants, and I'm not a party to the suit, contesting the 4th decimal point, and if the error as you used lands up at the 4th decimal point, here we go again with another year, 2 years of litigation, so please check that. Now, I can come in and actually use the 36 pages and show you how that tax, that mill tax, varies at that significance, at that level of significance between each one. I don't know which way the errors go. I was not privy to the database. I'll take your database and I'll actually run the numbers, but you probably don't want me to because you don't want me to be a witness in your lawsuit. But 0.13. That's the level of significance of the error that I found on the 36 pages. So please consider that.